Okay, so we'll be reading the main text. But like I said, if you've been with us, you know that sometimes we may visit other books just to get clarity. All right, but the main text for this series has been Shehu Shagari. Shehu Shagari is Beckoned to Serve. Beckoned to Serve. The ethnic composition of the mutineers and the selective nature of their murders were soon perceived as ethnically motivated. Of the 8 core conspirators, actually 7. Of the 8 core conspirators, 7 were Igbo, while the remaining 1 was Yoruba. Save Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Unegbe, a Midwestern Igbo, neither of the 2 Igbo premiers of the East and Midwest regions nor any other Eastern Igbo military officer or politician was eliminated. I've said this before, nobody from the East died in that coup. People will say, how about Arthur Unegbe? How about Arthur Unegbe? He's from the Midwest. And he's Igbo. Did you not say Zogu is not Igbo again? Maybe Zogu is not Igbo because he's from the Midwest. How is Arthur Unegbe Igbo? Of course he's Igbo, that's the point. But the thing is that they planned in such a way that nobody from the East died. And the premier of the Midwest, who was also Igbo, was not killed. The one from the East was also not killed. Then it says, in fact, the eastern and midwestern capitals of Enugu and Benin City, respectively, were virtually untouched by the revolt. The fact that Ironsi was also an Igbo only served to reinforce suspicions that he was sympathetic to the mutineers. The view was patently dubious, but it was nevertheless widely shared, particularly among Northerners, who pointed to the disproportionate loss of their most prominent political and military figures vis-a-vis other regions. It was thus easy for some people to read ethnic bias into the actions of the new regime, to suspect that Easterners, particularly the Igbo, were battening upon others. Regrettably, Ironsi himself did not help matters by surrounding himself with a battery of predominantly Igbo advisors, who formed themselves into not only a think tank, but a sort of kitchen cabinet as well. And I said this last week, that all his advisors were Igbo. All. And when you say that, they'll tell you that, oh, but his bodyguards were not Igbo. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? We're talking about the people that advised him and told him and gave him advice about what to do as far as Nigerian, as far as laws were concerned for the entire country. In 1965, his would-be British predecessor, Major General Aguiyi Ironsi, opposed his appointment as GOC, but was overruled by Sir Abubakar, much also to the disapproval of some leading NPC figures. Ironsi was, however, a courageous, if somewhat elusive soldier. By the way, Ademola was supposed to be the first choice. Ogundipe was the first choice. Politics got in the way. Ironsi was, however, a courageous, if somewhat elusive soldier whose commitment to the military professional ethos seemed both strong and genuine. He was very much beholden to his advisors and unable or unwilling to discern the treacherous path which they wanted him to tread. These were clever men intent on fishing in troubled waters. On 21 February 1966, Ironsi elaborated on his regime's intentions in a major policy speech. Public affairs were to be conducted from the center to ensure control over all major areas of national activities and to plot a uniform pattern of development for the whole country. That's what he said. All major, listen to what he said though. He says public affairs were to be conducted from the center to ensure control over all major areas of national activities and to plot a uniform pattern of development for the whole country. That's a statement he made in 66. It's a statement people still make today. The idea you're going to have that you're going to have uniform development in different parts of Nigeria at the same time is around nonsense. Nigeria is not a local government, it's not a village. It's an entire country. To have uniform development in a state concept is not possible. Are we joking? It can't be uniform. It can't be uniform. But now it's in Nigeria. So let me tell you what this is, because when I say that, it's going to be like, what are you saying? What it really is that the idea of having people, exercise their agency and have autonomy in different regions is something that threatens a person with a unitary mindset. he feels that everything must be concentrated at the center, and then he must be the one to determine what happens in each region at the particular level. So for instance, you say something like, oh, you guys already have roads in that place. For instance, let me give an example. You guys already have airports in Lagos. You have international airports. Let's create one in Ebonyi. Now, in case you are hearing now, you feel like, how is that bad? It's not that it's bad. It's that it doesn't factor into it the traffic, the need for that infrastructure. We just have to have it. For instance, I was online today and some people saying things like, which there should be, that if the government can give them 3 things, they will not agitate again. Again, the person doesn't have, is not very present upstairs. Anyway, he said that government should give them seaport, which government cannot do. Only God can do that one because there's no sea in the region. Number 2, government should give them international airport, but there's already one in Enugu. I don't know if Enugu is outside the southeast. Then government should give them cargo airport. Every state governor is doing that right now. I don't know why it has to be the federal government. So here's the point. It's not that you can't have these things everywhere. It is that you cannot have, if for instance, a particular place has advantage in a particular area, you can't have the infrastructure they have in that place in another place just because you want to prove that you want uniform development. But in reality, what they're really trying to do will be to use what belongs to others to take care of their own space, because you already have something we don't have. You must also have what you have. That's not so much unity as it is stealing. And that's when they talk about the seaport thing. Number 1 is nonsense, because God, the creator of heaven and earth, knew that you would never need a seaport in that place, so he didn't bother putting sea there. The same way he didn't put sea in Kaduna. I don't see them saying the government must find a way to dredge. Which ocean will reach Kaduna now? Most is because nothing is impossible as we talk now. You can dredge ocean, reach Sokoto, especially when you are insane. Someone says just as equal state creation will make a local government to become state in the southeast. I said in the southeast, where we are going is that you say state and capital, Abia, Umaya, room and parlor. That's where we are going. The room will become state, the parlor will be capital. Because where are you going to put the state? And what this man is trying to do in Delta State, Nanyoma, they're already pushing back hard against it. Because if you want to create a 6th able state outside the eastern region, you're going to have to do 2 things. Number 1, you create the state. Number 2, the people now have to go and have a referendum to say whether they want to break out of the south to go and join the southeast. And the king say no, they don't want it. But I wish them all the best. Anyway, let's get back to the book. On 21 February 1966, Ironsi elaborated on his regime's intentions in a major policy speech. Public affairs were to be conducted from the center to ensure control over, quote, all major areas of national activities and to plot a uniform pattern of development for the whole country, end of quote. There will be no room, there will be no room for sectional or ethnic concerns. Excuse me, flower. How many times did I call you? Be proud of your ethnicity. Akwa Ibom is not Igbo. I can take this very personally. I served in Akwa Ibom. I kind of consider those people to be sane. Not so much for you. Akwa Ibom, Cross River, River State, they are not Igbo. It's not Igbo land. Why do you like stealing things like what lifestyle is this? This is what Ojukwu did that got him in trouble. You are doing it again. That's not Igbo land. Rivers is not Igbo land. Rivers is not Igbo. How can rivers be Igbo land? How can rivers be Igbo land? Do you think about these things? Where will you put the Ijos? Where will you put the Ogonis? Where will you put the Kalabari? Because they're all the Ijo groups I know. Kalabari is Igbo. Ogoni is Igbo. Guys, Read Sunset in Biafra. Let me tell you what Kelechi Amadi said. I'll even give you two things. Let me give you two. I'll go back to the book in the week, guys. Just say. Number one, Kelechi Amadi said that your people moved into their region in the 1940s. You moved into the region in the 1940s, and then you became very many. Read the book Sunset in Biafra by Kelechi Amadi and Ezekwiri, and he says they are not Igbo. Because even in the 60s, they had their own separate ethnic organization. They were not part of Igbo Union. Ikwere, Ekpeye, Eche, they say they are not Igbo. Why you guys are not civilized or long. Somebody says he's not a member of your family. I say you are a member of my family by force. The only reason you want that place is because they have oil and access to the sea. That is all. You don't care about them. And they know. You don't care. If anything happens to them, it doesn't concern you. You only want what they have. They say they're not Igbos. Let it rest. And this is the same problem they are having. Do you know how you guys got to that place? You know what? It's not today's story. Look for an interview with Dr. Okachiku. Yeah, Okachiku. That's his name. Dr. Okachiku. He's one of the leaders of Equity people. He explained how your guys got to that place. And it's a very pathetic story. And you know what people tell you these stories, which I'm not going to tell you today. They remind you because you guys go beyond your boundaries every time. You have a path. Now you got there. One of the groups in Anioma that is speaking against what Senator Ned Nwoko is doing is repeating exactly what I played the other day from the last Omu, the one before the present one. And she said there are 4 different groups that make up what you call the Anioma identity today. There's Benin, there is Yoruba, there is Igbo, and there's Igala. But one group says that all of them are Igbo. What kind of spirit do you have? Don't you know that sounds, you are uncivilized? Uncivilized. They are not denying that some of them are connected to you, but they are saying that they are from different places and they are from the new identity. Respect it. You know what? Keep fighting them. One day they will show you pepper. That's why they show you pepper after the war in Port Harcourt. Continue. One day we'll talk about that. Let's go back to the book now. Beckoned to Serve by Shehu Shagari. So, this is what it says. There will be no room for sectional or ethnic concerns. The infamous politics of civilian politicians. If all this sounded vaguely agreeable, northern elites saw it as a mere ploy to foster Igbo dominance and control over state power, resources, jobs, and patronage. Isolated from the hub of state power, they were inclined to see the consequences of such deprivation as all too frightening. Their fears were also widely shared by other non-Igbo elites, particularly within official circles, where there now developed weak channels of political communication and control among the soldiers, police, and civil servants who mainly composed the regime. And to the latter was added the isolation of the regime from outside political demands, made worse by the regime's own assumptions. People were prone to believe the worst, especially given the sorts of rumors that were emanating from the military. I'll take that again. People were prone to believe the worst, especially given the sorts of rumors that were emanating from military, police, and civil service circles. Such confidence-building measures as were undertaken were feeble and limited, and at any rate undermined by the particularly defective channels of communication between the center and the regions. Politics, political parties, and politicians were attacked by the regime, often to the cheers of a sectional and self-righteous media, and even some intellectuals. Who is it talking about? Let's visit a book quickly. We're coming back to this one. We'll go to The Educated Elite in Nigerian Society by E.A. Ayodele. Who were this? Let me read it again. It says politics, political parties, and politicians were attacked by the regime, often to the cheers of a sectional, read ethnic, read Igbo, and self-righteous media, and even some intellectuals. Who were those intellectuals? We shall now travel. This is what they said to Ironsi and how they supported Ironsi. So this book is called The Educated Elite in the Nigerian Society by E.A. Ayodele. Take a listen. Listen and be blessed. It would appear that the educated elite in the army had been infected with tribalism. The coup was executed by and large by the Igbo, witnessed the killing of all northern Nigerian officers within reach and of Yoruba officers suspected of being in sympathy with the Hausa Fulani elite of northern Nigeria. Moreover, no Igbo elite politician and disseminator of tribalism or sectionalism lost his life. The troops in Benin and Enugu under Igbo control refused to murder Dennis Osadebe and Michael Okpara respectively. But on the other hand, the federal prime minister and Chief Okotiebo, on the other hand, the federal prime minister and Chief Okotiebo, the Midwestern fighter against Igbo domination, were killed. By the way, how do I know that Okotiebo was a Midwestern fighter against Igbo domination? Because of the letter he wrote to Osadebe himself. I've read it here before. And because of the plan that Igbo National Congress had for him. I read it here before as well. The Igbo National Caucus had a plan for every region in Nigeria and specific politicians. And some of them ended up dead. We're just going to act like, there was no Igbo. Congrats. Let's go back. But on the other hand, so they didn't kill Dennis Osadebe or Michael Okpara. But on the other hand, the federal prime minister and Chief Okotiebo, the Midwestern fighter against Igbo domination, were killed. Also murdered were Esel Akintola, the premier of the West, and Amadu Bello, the premier of northern Nigeria. In the circumstances, the view began to gain ground that the coup was evidence that the Igbo plan for a takeover of the country was maturing. And there was the fact that the first head of the military government, Aguiyi Ironsi, surrounded himself with top Igbo civil servants as advisors. The suspicion of Igbo domination grew as Igbos within the army were promoted to the rank of officers, and the Unification decree was issued in response to the minority report of only one member on Wokedi. We read that in this book already. One person came up with there was supposed to be a committee, but only one person came up with a report that there must be Unification decree. We'll get to it later, but Nwokedi report gave us what happened in May. We'll read this later in this book as well, and another book when we get there. I'll take it again from there. The suspicion of Igbo domination grew as Igbos within the army were promoted to the rank of officers, and the Unification decree was issued in response to the minority report of only one member, Nwokedi, an Igbo, and against the firm recommendation of the majority of the committee that had been set up to examine the proposal. Frightened that the Unification decree would establish firmly Igbo control all over the country, the peoples of the North in May 1966 rose up against Igbo inhabitants in northern region. This first of a series of spontaneous massacres of Igbos was the last straw which persuaded a number of Igbo leaders that their dream of Igbo domination was beyond achievement, that the size of Nigeria and the factor of loyalty to the tribe rather than to one Nigeria in quote were strong among the large ethnic groups in the country, that justly or unjustly anti-Igbo feelings had risen very high in the rest of Nigeria. In the words of the academicians, this is where we're going. Akaro. This is where we're going. What are we even doing in this book? How did we get here? We got here because we saw a line in this book that says politics, political parties, and politicians were attacked by the regime, often to the cheers of a sectional, read Igbo, and self-righteous media, and even some intellectuals. What did those intellectuals say? Now, why we can't hear be that? More read that. In the words of the academicians or intellectuals, themselves all the time tribalists who drew up the argument for secession as early as May 1966. This is what they said, intellectuals. Since the last event, Unification decree, it has become crystal clear that the former leaders of the action group have, as predicted, joined forces with the former leaders of the NNDP in a renewed battle against Easterners. Who were these people? Action group, we know, that's a party, Awolow's party. NNDP was a faction that was created after SLA pulled out of AG. He formed his own party with half, or let's just say like a section, if not half, of Action Group. They formed Nigerian National Democratic Party using the name that Robert Macaulay used in 1923. So they brought that name back, and now after the old war has happened, they had killed SLA, things have happened. AG and NNDP now came back together. These clowns now said It has become these clowns were lecturers and intellectuals and professors, but they were still clowns. That's why somebody put something on social media. I'm sure you have seen it on Twitter. Some people, regardless of whether it's PhD or somebody setting gala, the mindset is the same. Since the last event, Unification Decree, it has become crystal clear that the former leaders of the action group have, as predicted, joined forces with the former leaders of the NNDP in a renewed battle against Easterners. I'll tell you what the battle is. Recent events have further demonstrated that these leaders are clearly striving to counter the efforts of the military regime to forge national unity. In other words, they're not fighting Igbo, they are fighting the military regime and countering the effort of that regime to come up with national unity. And because they are pushing against the Unification Decree, they are fighting Igbos. That's what the intellectual said. Recent events have further demonstrated that these leaders are clearly striving to counter the efforts of the military regime to forge national unity. In this respect, the Western leaders are one with the Northern leaders who are similarly opposed to a unitary system of government in Nigeria, and all of them are anxious that the country should revert to the old federal structure, which, as everyone knows, was the principal cause of most of the wars of the First Republic. That's intellectuals. If so-called intellectuals are sounding like this, what do you think the Okpasela will be saying? And why are you angry that Okpasela talk the way they do? But this is not to say that the generality of the Igbo saw themselves as seekers of dominance over the rest of Nigeria. You're making excuses for them, but let's continue. Or that the Igbo leadership saw itself as exploiters of other peoples in Nigeria. The self-styled leaders and spokesmen of the Igbo people, mainly university intellectuals, quote unquote, argued passionately that it would be wrong to see the Igbo as grabbers of most of the offices in the country. Rightly considered, they contended they deserved to hold these posts by virtue of their special talents. They were superior to other ethnic groups in culture and civilization. I don't look for that culture and civilization since I never find out, but if you find out, well, help your brother. They were superior to other ethnic groups in culture, in quote-unquote culture and civilization. They were the most receptive to new ideas and the most able to assimilate them. It would be most unfair and unjust for any other people in Nigeria, particularly the Northerners, to wish to dominate Nigeria. For Northern Nigeria lacked education and culture and was never in a position to contribute to the advancement or progress of the country. These were intellectuals. These were intellectuals. Now, I've seen some people in the comment section again, especially on TikTok. I hope you grow up at some point in your life, because you shouldn't pass this stupidity to the next generation. But here's the point. What folks did, what you guys do is this. You can have your father, a member of your family, say the most stupid thing, but you will never condemn him. As soon as somebody says that is wrong, you now look at that person and say he's a bigot and a tribalist and all kind of nonsense. You don't have sense. Let me tell you what the problem is. It's not that we are reading history. It's that history is repeating itself. What did I read here right now that you have not heard in the last 1 year, in the last 1 month, in the last 1 week? What have I read here that you have not heard? That they are better than everybody. Have you not heard that recently? Have you not heard that, for instance, we should have national unity? Was it not Mogalu, a professor who was championing for what do they call it? Strong men. Nigeria needs strong men. It says for the nation to be born, the tribe must die. Who talks like that? A person shouting national unity. It's not unity. It's death. It's erasure. The only good thing is I'm glad you're not capable of doing anything. And if you try, you'll meet your Waterloo. Parties and politicians themselves were harassed to refrain from activity, while trade unions and ethnic associations were warned to keep out of politics. In May 1966, Decree number 33, we'll get to 34 later, Decree number 33 outlawed 81 political parties and groups, along with 26 of the most prominent ethnic associations. On the whole, though, only few politicians were detained, the most noticeable being 15 erstwhile NNDP grandees in the Western region. 81 political parties, all political parties and all ethnic organizations were outlawed. Why am I pausing to talk about this? You remember when somebody, I don't know if you saw this thing that trended last week. Even this man, Moghalu, also said something similar. Whenever you hear people invoke Rwanda, in fact, say things like there is no tribe in Rwanda, everybody is the same. Why can't we have it in Nigeria? Because we have a different history. That's why. But what did he do? The first thing one of the first things he did, it wasn't the first, he had already promoted this. He promoted 18 Igbos in one day. 3 Northerners ahead of the Yorubas. None of them was promoted, by the way. Not in April. What did he do in May? He said no ethnic meetings, no Yoruba groups should be meeting. No Hausa, no Igbo. We should all meet as Nigerians. When you hear that, as a naive person, your mind, you're like, that's growth. No, that's not growth. That's death. That is identity being destroyed so that they can create a new idea, which is based on his own identity. People that move like that, this is what they do. They will say, let's remove, we're all the same. Don't be Yoruba, don't be Igbo, don't be Hausa, don't be Tiv. You're not Tiv, we're all Nigerians. But the person who is starting to do that, watch. What will happen, from the dust of these burnt identities, the phoenix that will rise will be the phoenix of his own identity. All of you will have to share his own identity.